Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back for another episode of the Jane Warren podcast. And y'all, you've been sitting patiently because I haven't released an episode for the last couple weeks. I was away in the UK. I've been battling a cold, which has made it very challenging to do any type of recording as I've been coughing. However, here we are, and I have an amazing guest with me today. I have Sarah Elsherbeny, and we are so excited because today she is going to chat with us not only about her incredible entrepreneurship journey, but we're going to talk about cycle, womb healing, and feminine energetics. As I said to her at the beginning, I don't even know what that means, but it's very exciting. All of her links and things are going to be in the description. She's got some cool shit to say. So, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Oh, I'm so excited. So Sarah and I know each other. We're working with the same coach and mentor right now. And, I'm always seeing this content you're putting out. And I'm like,
Mhm.
damn, this is interesting. This is cool shit. So, I don't know a lot about this whole like energetic side of things and cycle and womb healing and all the cool things that you do. And I know that you really help empower women to create luxurious as fuck and pleasure filled lives. Like, who who doesn't want a pleasure filled life? That's what I'm striving for. So I believe by the end of listening to this podcast, y'all are gonna learn a lot and hopefully start your pleasure filled life. So Sarah, let's take us back. Why don't you share with everyone a little bit about you, about who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I would love to. A little bit about me. I was actually born in Egypt, moved to Florida, pretty much raised in a traditional American lifestyle, which created a lot of the best word is maybe just a little bit of turmoil when you have the culture clash and being so Americanized and being in a very traditional Egyptian household, being raised as a Muslim as well. So yeah, I mean, it was interesting, and at first it didn't make a lot of struggles. But as I grew older and started to learn more about myself, and back in 2014 was when I really struggled a lot with my mental health. I struggled with anxiety, depression, you name it. I like got to a point where I was like, I just don't even want to be here anymore. It was horrible, like struggling with friends, with people, and just struggling kind of honestly, I felt like I was struggling a little bit with my identity because at the age of 16 my parents told me, hey, it was time for you to wear the scarf. I'm like, okay, cool, you just listen to your parents at that point. Did that for a few years, and then I was like, nope, we're taking this off. I can't. Like, I started learning more about how these big decisions on like my body, my religion, my spirituality had to come from me, and not because somebody else was telling me like this is what you had to do. And so following that big, I like to call bottom of the well moment for me, I took a year off of school completely. Like I tried to pile things on my plate, which is very common with me. I tried to take more classes so I could finish up. That did not work well. I started dropping the classes like flies and started taking just one at a time. Um, and it wasn't until probably maybe like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years ago that I started learning more about the energetic side, the spirituality. I actually started my own spiritual journey at that point. And it's like, beware when you start your spiritual journey because it's like you don't know what you're going to expect. And so that's kind of when I started learning more about like the feminine body, the womb, and I started learning more about how like you as yourself, like your egg was present far back to when your grandma was having your mother. And like imagine the amount of generations that is going through, and then just everything that you are going through, like even imprinted on you like subconsciously, like before even coming onto this earth, pretty much. And so yeah, that's kind of how where I got to where I'm at now. And now I'm just super passionate to like be able to educate and empower other women like myself, really take control more of their life and be able to, you know, break the generational cycle, let's put it that way, so that it's not a repeating cycle over and over again. And yeah, pretty much. It's like pretty deep.
No, for sure. Oh my gosh, you touched on so many things we'll unpack there. But thank you for sharing that with everyone. And I can only imagine what you might have gone through at that age, and making these decisions for yourself and how challenging that might be. And I think that'll resonate with a lot of listeners as well. So I never thought about generationally us being the egg that then, was a part of our mothers, part of our grandmothers when they're having our mothers. So talk us through some of this. Talk us through this, generational side of energetics and this generational side of things that we take on and how that then affects our lives before we dive into, how we can start breaking that.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know, as women, when we are born with 1 million eggs automatically, whereas men constantly can regenerate that. Us as women, we are already born with all the eggs that we need for our entire life. And so, this is a thought process that kind of blew my mind a little bit when you think of it that way. Whereas, like, as women, once you start your period, basically think about it as that every month we are kind of experiencing a little bit of a death and rebirth, if you will, because if you're not, utilizing your egg to procreate and have a baby, that egg dies. And so it's like in your body, you are constantly experiencing this month after month. And this is why also as women come to our menstrual cycle, we are experiencing this like, oh, I just want to burn everything to the fucking down and like, fuck it, I'm over this.
Yeah.
Like, this is why we constantly experiencing that every month. But the generational cycle piece is, and I learned this through a really amazing sitcom, I guess, or show on Netflix called Another Self. And basically, the way that it works is like especially when you're holding a baby in your womb, even though that baby is not externally like out in the world, what you watch, what you listen to, what you do, that baby is being exposed to it internally anyways. And so, they literally come out into this world with so much trauma or so much like already limiting beliefs and things like that. It's kind of mind-blowing to think of that, but a lot of us don't think of that. Like when you are building a baby, you have to be very mindful of like, what are you listening? What environment are you in? What are you exposing that baby to? Because it's like once that baby comes through, they're already imprinted with all of this stuff. And if you again, it comes to this part like where once we know better, we do better. And I know for me, when I have kids one day and being educated about helping them work through that trauma and limiting beliefs is like implementing those things like chiropractics practices, all of these different things to help them release and work through that at such a young age. But because we don't, you grow up with all of these thoughts of like not feeling good enough or not feeling adequate enough and unexplained symptoms, unexplained symptoms of like, oh, well, why am I experiencing numbing or why am I experiencing tremors in my hands or my legs? And there's no like medical reason for it. And a lot of that has to do with just generational things that have happened, like, traumatic experiences that maybe you haven't necessarily physically lived through, but somebody else did. And because you are already a part of that generation, you've in a way like subconsciously lived through that. And so it manifests into your physical body. And then, unexplained symptoms, repressed emotions, all of that just kind of like surfaces again once you actually start trying to like work through it. But it's just mind blowing to me.
Oh my gosh, it's my mind is just, yeah, blown. I'm like, whoa,
Like,
because when I work with my clients and all the work I've done on myself around my own limiting beliefs, you're digging back and looking back as to where they may have come from. And I
mhm,
know, I mean, I never went deeper than, through maybe childhood, right? And that,
mhm,
these are things that may have been projected from your family or projected from your surroundings as to why you have these self-doubt or why you have, the negative thoughts that you have about not being good enough, whatever that thought could be.
yeah.
I never even had the awareness that it could be even deeper of things that you haven't even actually necessarily you've been exposed to a certain degree. I suppose that
Mhm.
at a within a dimension you have been exposed to it, but you may have not actually been living, as in our true form right now, in our 3D form, you may have not been living that. Whoa.
Yeah, it's it's pretty wild and pretty deep, but yeah, it's crazy. Like I I think the more people start understanding and learning more into that, the more awareness they're willing to bring to that and being able to, support our children from a younger age so that, they don't have to go through that. And the only way to break that and is to resolve it, is to work through it, or else it'll just be a cycle that continues to manifest in your life time and time again. And we'll sit here and be like, well, I don't know why this is happening to me. Well, it's like sometimes we actually have to really go deeper within. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, like a lot of, and myself included, until I've gotten to that point of like self-awareness, it's like, okay, I'm ready to do the work. But most people and most women aren't willing to sit with their thoughts and willing to actually work through a lot of those feelings and digging deeper as to like where is this stemming from and how can I start working through that now to avoid that future, overspill, put it that way.
So I'm curious with cycles,
Mhm.
and as you mentioned, ever since we as females get our period and we're releasing an egg,
Mhm.
and that life and death kind of thing.
Yeah.
What are the effects of birth control? Because I mean, I can talk about my personal experience of going
Yeah.
off birth control because I was on it for like 18 years. And that I'll tell you that after you share your thoughts on this. But what are the effects? Because obviously, with birth control, it's just hormonally tricking your body in a way, I suppose. But what are your thoughts on that and how that affects the whole process?
Yeah. So birth control actually completely shuts down your hormonal cycle as a woman. It doesn't even resolve any of the issues that you think it's going to resolve. It just suppresses a lot of it, which is why a lot of women experience that flood of hormones and flood of issues when they come off of it, because again, it was only suppressing the issues that you were having without actually getting to the root cause of it. But so when you are on a pill, whether that's contraceptive or synthetic hormonal contraceptive, you're not actually ovulating. It's kind of like a placebo effect. So you're not experiencing all these different phases or the different ebbs and flows that women would experience being on their actual cycle naturally. And so that bleed that you have while you're on your pill, it's kind of like a placebo basically. It's just a placebo week while you are being on your birth control, and so it's not really a period. So you don't necessarily experience the uterine lining growth that women experience going through that. And so yeah, I mean, even it throws you off. And I tell women a lot, even if they are on birth control or coming off of it, as women, our cycle is in tune with the moon as well. So the moon is on that 28-day cycle, so are we. And so again, it just shuts down that completely. And so you don't experience the natural ebb and flow, but you can get yourself kind of back into that balance by also following the moon cycle too. For women who are either on birth control or don't have a cycle, or maybe it's just very irregular because of being on birth control and coming back. That's also like another way to kind of bring yourself back into that balance and allowing your body to go through that same ebb and flow that you normally would.
Oh, that's so interesting about the moon as well. That makes total sense. I know when I was on the pill for 18 years, and when
Oof.
I went off it a couple years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm so like health focused and everything.
Mhm.
Like I was in a relationship, you know what I mean? But I was just
Mhm.
like, as much as I'd want to be on it, like I'm like, you know what? I'll track my period. I'll do whatever I need to do to avoid, like, I didn't want to get pregnant. So to
Mhm.
avoid that, obviously contraception too. But, and but when I went off of it, I actually did a course with someone that my friend follows on Instagram, and it was
Mhm.
like called Mend Your Cycle.
Ooh.
And it taught me, okay, I went off the pill. I'm 39 at the age of like, I don't know, 35.
Mm.
I didn't even know about like I had no zero education on what my cycle was because when I turned 18, I went on the
Mhm.
pill. And I mean, it got a late period. I got it when I was 16. So, but like literally, I had no idea that there was phases. I had no
Mhm.
idea. And she talked about like nourishing too during certain phases and how you feel during certain phases. And I've
Mhm.
just recently like been sharing this information with my best friend because she's been feeling certain ways at certain times. And I'm like, and our cycles are kind of synced. So I'm like, girl, you ovulating, like, oh, you're in this phase, like, and it's funny because we don't even realize, and we're not educated on this in high school. You're not educated on any of this. And it's just a question. We have to go out of our way. Like, this course was the most insightful thing. And I was like, wow, like, I didn't even know any of this. And it just was so helpful. And I know, and then what was great, fortunately, I didn't have any bad side effects of
Mhm.
going off the pill, except for like finally feeling things happening in my body. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like actually being in tune with my hormones. Like I know I know when I'm ovulating for multiple in multiple ways your body shows
Yep.
you and tells you, but like I can feel it the day I'm ovulating. Like I feel it more than I feel when I have my period. And it's like it's just so fascinating and I'm just like wow. Obviously the pill serves its purpose and to each their own on being on it. Obviously, I was on for a very long time. I think a lot of people in our generation have probably been on it for a very long time or still on it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just fascinating. So I'd love to know, what does it mean to like heal, cycle heal, womb heal? What does that mean?
So, as I was telling you guys a little bit earlier, how you store your emotions in your body, as women especially, we hold a lot of our emotions and trauma and all of that in our hips, in our womb. And so as our womb being a creative center for us as well, birthing kids, children, obviously, but also birthing creations. With us as women, we hold on to so much trauma in your womb. And so starting that healing process, for example, like a really great one is, me personally, like I don't necessarily have like this perfect, tight-knit best friend type of relationship with my mother. And so with that comes a lot of my own personal womb healing to work through that, to be able to, accept that the fact that my mom comes from a different age. She was born in a different era and they see things differently. And a lot of times it's going to be hard for them to try to accept or see that I want to do things differently than the norm. And so, with a lot of the womb healing, you can heal a lot of these relationships with your mother or just other women in general, like having the sisterhood, like especially if you're somebody who has struggled with just creating like nourishing relationships with women instead of visibly or visually seeing it as competition, like there's also that sisterhood when that's happening there too. And so it even goes deeper into like maybe you're having trouble conceiving, like fertility and all of that. Like womb healing goes so much deeper than just like balancing your hormones and clearing all of that, like clearing a lot of the trauma, a lot of the healing, a lot of the emotions that you consistently like store there is going to trickle into like being able to feel so much better, like get that vitality back into your body and like being able to control that, because it's also like your sacral energy center too. So it's like being able to ignite that, you feel a sense of like safety in your own body and like being able to claim that. And I think it's one of probably the most like underrated or just overlooked, I guess, part of our body and working to heal that. And so yeah, a lot of women like working with your hips and opening your hips and dancing and all of that. Like a lot of people look at that as like that's too sexy. You shouldn't be doing that. Like it's not cool or whatever. And it's like, no, this is actually healing. Just because I'm shaking my booty or twerking doesn't mean that I'm doing that for attention, but more to get that energy moving and releasing whatever is being stored there. And so a lot of women can experience a lot of like emotional release doing that. But yeah, it's really getting to the root of that just to heal those bloodlines as well. Because again, it goes back to not just personally what you're feeling or going through with your mother, but could be your mother's mother and your mother's mother. Like it goes down to generational, lines down there. So,
How would someone know that this is something that they should think about or that they
mm,
should look into? Or would you say this is something that like everyone probably has some type of work? It's like mindset work, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
every single person could
yeah.
do mindset work. So is this something you think that every single woman can and should get curious about?
Oh, 1,000%. I think every single woman needs to explore and, work through that just because it might not be prominent in your life. Like you're not necessarily seeing something, doesn't mean that there isn't something there. And so it might not be as worse as other people or whatever, but I think every woman would be beneficial to doing that because, you have the societal boxes that you're being put into, all of that. But yeah, I think everyone and anyone could benefit from that, and 1,000% they should. If they're looking for signs or things like that, just like lack of creativity, decreased sexual desire, like you just don't you're lonely all the time, you feel like you have no zest for life and you're just kind of living through the motions. And like creativity and it being your sexual center is probably one of the two biggest things where it's like if you're feeling a lack of creativity in your life, in business, whatever it is, like lack of sexual desire, libido, all of that, then we gotta work on the womb and figure out what's going on there. But
I
yeah.
think I know personally a number of individuals that in their relationships or in themselves really are
Mhm.
have a lack of, yeah, libido, like it's just not there anymore at all. And that might resonate well with as well. I'm sure a lot of things that you said, so a lot of those examples. How would someone start? Like what would be something that someone could do, obviously, through working with yourself,
Mhm.
that specializes in this, but what are something if someone is listening and they're like, yeah, that's me. I don't know where my sex drive went. And I think we as women just say a lot of shit like, well, I'm just getting older. Well, because I know like some of my friends, like I tell them about my stories. I'm
Mhm.
like single, slash dating, and then it's like, whoa, like, whoa, you have a high sex drive. I'm like, yeah, bitch. It's like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
my hormones are working. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I'm like, okay,
Normal.
don't you want to? Like, it's like, I get it. Like, maybe you've been married for a long time or whatnot, but in my head, I'm just like, realistically, when you think about it,
Mm,
now, I'm also a very energetic person. So like I know in relationships, there's been times when I didn't have a high sex drive or I just didn't want to because the energy was off, right? And that was like a big factor for me and probably for a lot of women as well. But I think like it's interesting because when we think about our cycles and how our bodies go each month, like provided you're not on any type of pill or anything, when you're ovulating, your body's like, let's go. Like your body's like, okay, come on, I'm ready.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's hilarious. I know. I look at my app
Absolutely.
and I'm just like, I'll just have this extra urge and I'm like, oh shit. And I'll look, I'm like, yep, I knew it. Like I'm in that window. You know
Yep.
what I mean? So it's kind of like when you think about it, naturally, we're designed to want to do that. Like if at certain stages of our lives when we have this cycle and our hormones are
Mhm.
flowing the way they are. But if someone, isn't feeling that, what would you recommend for them? Like what is something that they can do to kind of get in tune or to get more curious about this?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I did, um, just a little back. So I was in a 12-year relationship, thought I was going to marry this person. This is the person I wanted to be with. All the things. And then I felt that disconnect when I moved to Oregon from Florida, started school, did all of that. And I just broke it off because I had a lot of shit that I had to work through and heal because it's like you said, if you don't have that desire, you don't have that love or that connection anymore, then it's like you're beating at a dead fish and it's like I need to do my work and you're clearly not going to be able to be on that journey with me because especially him being also from the same culture, they're very close-minded, and when they think about like, oh, you're going to heal, what are you going to heal from? I'm like, boy, I got a lot of shit to heal from.
You're like,
Like
don't you know if you only knew?
literally. Like, I got a big ass book that I can tell you, but um the biggest thing for me was dancing. Like, I dancing was one of the biggest things that like I innately loved and knew that it was something that I loved doing, but was always shamed and was always shy about doing that just because of the judgment and the culture and being at women and just growing up in a very conservative mindset, I guess, culture and things like that. But don't underestimate the power of dancing. So even if it's just don't like I had to release that mindset of like this is how you're supposed to dance or this is how you're supposed to twerk. And like it has to be perfect. And it's like it doesn't. Like you do what you do. And so I think the biggest thing for anybody who just wants to start and dip their toes in, like dancing is one of the most beautiful and funnest things that you can do. Have dance parties, shake your ass, like nobody's watching, like just have fun with doing that. If you're not a dancing person, I highly recommend everybody just try it at least once. It's fun. But for those who aren't necessarily a dancing person and maybe you're more of a yoga and gentle movements, then I'd recommend um every day, like move your hips, like just move your hips, stretch them, and do that every day for like 5 minutes. And you'll start to notice your flexibility getting better, but also just your mood. And maybe things will come through, and that's totally okay. Like, allow them to come through. Have a journal nearby to just jot down any thoughts that just come up for you. Um, but yeah, I think those would probably be the top two, especially when you're trying to like work through a lot of any stored emotions when it comes to like your moon, your womb and all of that. But yeah, what again, like I said, the top three things is just like breath, sound, and movement are the three like core things that you want to start working through to kind of dip your toes in there. But yeah, I think those are probably the biggest things that I'd recommend.
Oh, that's so great. And honestly, I love that you mentioned dancing because even when I worked like in more the fitness side, when I had my fitness business, I
Mm,
would tell people like movement is movement. Like if you wanted, if you don't want to go to the gym and you want to dance, like fucking dance. Like who cares, you know? Just do it. And I agree. Like I love music, and so I always play music in my house. And like, I'll move around. Sometimes in the morning, I'll be like making my coffee and I'm like
mhm,
dancing. Like I'll be like obsessed with a song and I'll just play it and I'll dance in my kitchen and like, you know what I
mhm,
mean? Just grooving with myself or whatever.
mhm,
But no, that's some really great like advice and some great tips for everyone listening. I think something to remember, this phrase my friend
mhm,
always says to me, and it's like, it's common but not normal. And I think we normalize a lot of things. So like low libido. Like if you and all your other friends have low libidos and you're like, well, guess this is just being 39, guess this is just 40, like this is what happens. Like we normalize that shit. And it's like, no, like, yeah, it's common, but
mhm,
it's not normal. Like, and so any of these things you might be feeling, or if you're like, wow, I used to be like this, but now I'm not like that anymore. It's like
mhm,
starting to open up your awareness, which is exactly what Sarah's helping you do today. And what we're helping you do is open your awareness. Like awareness is the greatest agent for change. The second you become aware of something, the second you can start to shift something.
mhm,
And so if you are feeling any of the things that she said, it's like try, I love that. And so true. I'm going to recommend this to some of my friends, like those hip openers and stuff. And it's interesting because I think about my lifestyle. And like,
mm,
yes, I do sit at my desk to work for part of the day,
yeah,
but I'm always moving around. Like I get up, go for walks. I exercise regularly. It's like all these things where, I'm like I'm
yeah,
moving my hips and I'm constantly like moving my body, which probably helps a lot in like the way that I feel and releasing what I need to
mhm.
release.
Yeah, gotta move that stagnant energy. I mean, it's a very sedentary lifestyle that this system is, designed for. And like with me being in school all the time and being sitting in a chair all the time and, coming home and you're doing work and you're sitting down and all of that, like take those dance breaks, takes like even if it set a reminder. Like a really cool thing that my good friend does and roommate now is that she'll set a reminder on her phone to where it's like, oh, it's time for you to take some deep breaths. And it's like, okay, cool. We're going to sit down and take some deep breaths. Even if you have to set a reminder on your phone to be like, okay, dance party now in between clients or in between, going to work or things like that, or take your lunch break outside and ground a little bit, like, gotta get that energy moving or else it's just pent up there and then you feel that stuckness where you're like, ugh, I was like, okay, now what?
No, that's so good and so easy. These little things, right? I mean, anyone that wears a wearable, like I don't wear a wearable
Mm,
tracker or anything, but it tells you to like could tell you to move. I had a rule like because I work in the morning from my desk, and I'd say
mm,
I'm not allowed to eat my lunch at my desk. So I'm
mm,
like, I have to I eat on my front porch or
mhm,
like take it into my living room or somewhere. I just can't sit. Like I can't be eating it at my desk. And I like made that rule because it's like you just keep going, you just keep
yeah,
working.
yeah.
Okay, this is so amazing. This is like so insightful. Oh my God, my mind is blown. I'd love for you to share where you show up. What do you got going on right now?
Yeah. So I am mostly on Instagram. That's pretty much where I show up. My stuff does cross share on other platforms, but my energy is focused on Instagram. So you can follow me at solistic.energy. And yeah, I mean, current offerings right now, I have my one-to-one space. So if you're looking to really work intimately on some deeper work stuff, then I do have some space there. I also have a passive course, which is great for beginners. It starts to allow you to learn a little bit more about your body, your energy centers, EFT, a little bit about your cycles, things like that. So it's a great way to kind of dip your toes. And yeah, other than that, I do have an upcoming mastermind that I've been working on. So I'll just keep your eyes peeled for that. If you are a mastermind kind of girly, then that will be coming soon shortly as well.
Amazing. I will have all your links, everything in the show notes. So, Sarah, thank you. This is so great, so insightful. I love talking to you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.